I didn't know the cold could feel personal. Not just on the skin, but deep, somewhere you can't touch. That first winter, the wind didn't just freeze my hands. It froze pieces of my heart I didn't know were fragile. I remember waking up before the sun, the sky still dark, the air sharp. I wrapped myself in layers, clothes that didn't quite fit, gloves that weren't warm enough, and I told myself, just get through today. I had never experienced silence like that before. The kind of silence where even your thoughts sound too loud. Where the world feels big and you feel small, smaller than you've ever felt. Back then I thought I was prepared. I thought I knew what it meant to start over. I thought the hardest part would be the work. But the hardest part was the loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone in a room, but the kind that comes from being surrounded by people who don't know your story, your language, your laugh, your memories. The kind of loneliness that follows you into every conversation and sits with you at every meal. The kind of loneliness that makes you miss things you never thought you'd notice. The smell of your street after it rained, the sound of your name said with warmth, the way familiar laughter used to feel like home. That winter I cried quietly. Not because of the cold, but because everything around me felt foreign and I didn't know if I still belonged anywhere. But that was only the beginning. Because now when I cry, it's not from loneliness anymore. It's from something else entirely. And this is the story of how that change happened. Before I came here, I had a life that felt familiar. Not perfect, not easy, but familiar, and that matters more than we realize. I knew the streets. I knew the rhythm of the days. I knew the smell of morning air after the first cup of coffee. I knew who I was when I laughed, when I was quiet, when I was tired. At home, even silence had texture. It wasn't empty. It was shared, with family, with neighbors, with memories that lived in the walls. There were faces I saw every day without thinking about them. People who didn't need explanations to understand my mood. People who knew the story behind my scars, my habits, my pauses. Back then, I didn't think much about those things. I thought life was small. Sometimes I felt trapped by routine. Like there had to be something more, something bigger, waiting somewhere else. I remember the conversations people had in my neighborhood. One day I'll leave. One day I'll go somewhere where life is better. One day. Most people say one day their whole lives. I didn't want to be one of those people. I didn't want to spend years wondering what if. So I made the decision. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without speeches. Just me in a suitcase. Just me and the belief that somewhere, somehow, there was space for me to build something new. But I didn't understand yet what I was leaving. I thought I was leaving a place. A city. A routine. But I was also leaving. The version of myself who belonged without trying. The language that shaped my emotions. The laughter that didn't need translation. The comfort of being known without having to explain. No one tells you that. People tell you about opportunities, about money, about a better life. But they don't tell you what it costs. They don't tell you that you'll miss the sound of your own name spoken in the voice of someone who loves you. They don't tell you that you'll miss sunlight through windows you no longer recognize. They don't tell you that some things are not just memories, they are roots. The day I left, I told myself I would come back soon. 6 months. Maybe 1 year. I said goodbye like someone who believes time waits for them. But time does not wait. Life does not pause. People change, including the people back home. Including the person who leaves. I didn't realize it then, but the moment I stepped onto that plane, I started becoming someone else. Not better. Not worse. Just someone I hadn't met yet. When the plane landed, I remember expecting to feel something big. Excitement. Victory. Relief. Something. But what I felt was nothing. Just a quiet, heavy stillness, like my body had arrived but my soul was still in transit. I walked through the airport with my bags, pretending I knew where I was going. Everyone around me moved with purpose. Fast steps. Heads held high. No hesitation. Meanwhile, I felt like I was learning how to walk again. Outside, the air hit me like a wall. Cold. Sure. Unforgiving. I breathed in and the air felt too big for my chest. Cars moved differently here. People didn't look at each other. No one made eye contact. Everyone seemed to be living inside their own world. And I realized something I had never considered before. Being unknown is not freedom. Sometimes it's loneliness. The first place I stayed wasn't mine. A small room shared with people I barely knew. Different languages. Different habits. Different silences. I remember lying on the mattress that first night. It wasn't uncomfortable. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the distance. Not the physical one, but the emotional one. The distance between who I had been and who I needed to become to survive here. I kept telling myself, this is temporary. But temporary things have a way of becoming permanent when you don't have another option. The days were long. The nights were longer. I went to stores and couldn't ask for what I needed. I wanted to speak, but the words felt stuck behind my teeth. Everything sounded different when I said it. Even my own voice. I tried calling home. The conversations were warm, but I was changing faster than the words could explain. I didn't know how to say, I miss me. Not just home, I miss myself. I don't know who I am here yet. So instead I said, I'm fine. Things are okay. I'm just tired. Everyone understood that. Everyone always understands tired. I thought I would adapt quickly. I thought strength meant not feeling anything. But adaptation doesn't happen in days. Or even months. Adaptation happens in moments. The moment you try to speak and someone asks you to repeat, again. The moment you walk into a room and feel invisible. The moment you laugh alone because no one else gets the joke. The moment you realize the person you were back home would feel like a stranger here. I didn't cry that first week. Or the second. I was too busy surviving. But the winter was coming. And I didn't know yet how deeply winter can reach inside a person. Winter didn't arrive all at once. It came slowly, in the shadows, in the air, in the light disappearing earlier every day. I remember the first morning I stepped outside and saw my breath in front of me. Back home, my breath was invisible. Here, even the air made sure I knew I was somewhere different. The cold wasn't just temperature. It was presence. It got into my clothes, my bones, my thoughts. It sat on my chest the way loneliness does, quietly without asking permission. I had never owned gloves before. I didn't know how many layers were enough. People told me, you'll get used to it. But they didn't explain that it wasn't the weather I needed to get used to. It was the isolation. Winter is when everything slows down. People stay inside. Streets get quiet. Conversations get shorter. Smiles become rarer. And when the world gets quiet, your memories get louder. I started remembering things I never thought I would miss. The heat from the kitchen stove. The way my home smelled after rain. The laughter that filled rooms without effort. The sound of someone calling my name with affection. I remember one day clearly. I was walking back from work. Snow on the ground. Hands cold even inside my pockets. The sky completely gray, the kind of gray that feels like the world has stopped feeling anything. I passed people on the sidewalk but no one looked up. And something inside me just cracked. I didn't cry loudly. There were no tears running down my face. It was the kind of cry that stays behind the eyes, in the throat, in the chest. The kind of cry you feel, not see. The kind that whispers, I am not okay. But I didn't have the words at the time. Not in English. Not even in my own language. So I did what many immigrants do. I worked. I worked harder. I filled the silence with effort. I filled the loneliness with motion. As if exhaustion could bury feelings. But loneliness is patient. It waits for you in the quiet moments. When the shower water hits your back, when you sit on the edge of the bed, when you're standing at the bus stop at 5 a.m. with your head down, pretending the world isn't heavy. And then one night, it all came out. I was in my room. The house was quiet. Everyone asleep. Just the hum of the heater filling the darkness. And I finally let myself cry. Not because I was weak. Not because I regretted leaving. Not because I wanted to go back. But because I realized I was mourning a version of myself I didn't know how to return to. Winter does that to you. It strips away everything extra. It leaves you with your most honest self. And that honesty hurts before it heals. Work became my anchor. Not because it felt good, but because it was the only thing that made sense. In work there are no translations. No explanations. No need to talk about who you were before. Work doesn't ask about your past. It only asks, can you keep going? I woke up before the sun. Most days the world was still dark when I left the house. The cold felt sharper at that hour, like it cut through the air before touching your skin. I walked fast, head down, hands in my pockets. The silence of the street felt like an extension of the silence inside me. At work, everything moved quickly. Machines, orders, time, people. Except me. I moved carefully, quietly, trying not to be noticed, trying not to make mistakes, trying to appear fine. Because when you are new, you learn how to take up as little space as possible. I watched others laugh together on breaks. Inside jokes, stories, shared histories. I had stories too. I had laughter inside me. But the words sat heavy in my mouth. So instead I just nodded, smiled, yes, thank you, sorry. My voice felt like something I had left behind in another country. The work itself wasn't the hardest part. Hard work I understood. Hard work I had seen before. Hard work I could do. What I was not prepared for was the silence. The silence of eating alone. The silence of being surrounded by voices you cannot enter. The silence of small talk you don't yet know how to make. The silence of smiling so people think you're okay. People often say, "You're strong for starting over." But sometimes strength is just continuing when you feel invisible. Some days were too long. Some days were too quiet. Some days I held the tears in my throat until my shift ended. Not because something bad happened. Not because someone was cruel. But because I missed the version of myself who didn't have to try so hard to exist. There was a point where I realized something. I wasn't losing my identity, I was translating it. Slowly. Brokenly. Softly. Piece by piece. In every new sentence I tried to say. In every awkward conversation. In every moment I forced myself not to disappear. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't pretty. But it was real. And that's when I understood. The hardest part of starting over is carrying yourself through the days when no one sees how heavy your heart is. And yet I kept going. Because something inside me whispered, "You didn't come this far just to stop here." The moment things changed didn't look dramatic from the outside. No one else would have noticed it. But for me it was everything. It happened on a Tuesday. A regular day. Cold, gray, unremarkable. I was on my way to work, walking the same street I walked every morning. Same cracked sidewalk. Same faint smell of coffee drifting from a shop I never went into. Same cold air hitting my face. But something felt different. Instead of keeping my head down, instead of rushing through the cold, I looked up. And for the first time I really saw the city. Not as a place I was trying to survive. Not as a place I was trying to fit into. Not as something that was happening to me. But as a place I was living in. A place I was part of, even if I didn't feel it fully yet. I saw the way light reflected off windows. I saw steam rising from street grates. I saw frost glittering on tree branches like tiny stars. And it hit me gently, quietly. I'm still here. Not physically, but emotionally. Somewhere along the way I hadn't given up. I had been surviving, yes. But I had also been enduring. Holding myself together. Carrying myself through the dark. I didn't cry because I was overwhelmed. I cried because I realized I was stronger than I thought. Not the loud kind of strong. Not the confident kind. Not the kind that stands tall and fearless. But the kind that continues. The kind that wakes up again. The kind that keeps trying to speak even when the words feel clumsy. The kind that picks up the pieces of themselves without knowing how. The kind of strong that doesn't wait to feel brave to keep going. That day, on that quiet street, I let myself breathe in the cold air, not as an enemy but as something real, something present, something mine. And in that breath, I found something I thought I had lost. Myself. Not the old version. Not the one I left behind. A new one. A softer one. A stronger one. A version of me that knew how to survive both winter and loneliness. I realized that the tears I cried that winter were necessary. They weren't weakness. They were release. They were growth. They were the sound of my heart learning how to live in a new world. And now when I cry, it's not from loneliness. It's from recognizing how far I've come. How much I've carried. How much I've changed. Those tears are not the same. They come from gratitude. From memory. From the quiet knowing that I didn't break. I became. Living here didn't mean forgetting where I came from. It didn't mean choosing one life over another. It meant learning how to carry both, even when they feel too heavy at times. There are days when I feel like I belong here. When I understand the rhythm of the city as if it were my own. When I speak without thinking. When I laugh in a language that once felt foreign. When I walk down the street and recognize myself in the reflection of store windows. And there are days when I don't. Days when the smallest thing, a smell, a song, a memory, pulls me back to a place that no longer exists the way I remember it. This is the part no one tells you about. You become someone who exists in two places at once. Not fully here, not fully there, but something in between. And that's not a loss. It's growth. Because I didn't leave my past behind. I brought it with me. In the way I speak. In the way I love. In the way I hold myself when I'm tired. In the way I carry warmth even in the coldest winters. And slowly, without noticing, I began to build new memories here too. The first person who said my name correctly. The first time someone laughed at my joke in this language. The first warm conversation with a coworker at the end of a long shift. The first familiar route that felt like mine. The first time I cooked a dish from home and the kitchen smelled like memory. Those moments didn't erase the loneliness. But they softened it. They reminded me that home is not a place you return to. Home is something you build, piece by piece, in every place your heart learns to stay. I realized that I didn't lose my original me. I expanded. I became someone who can belong in two worlds. Someone who can hold two languages in a single sentence. Someone who can miss and love at the same time. Someone who can carry distance like a second skin, not as a wound but as a story. And this is the truth. The tears I cry now are different. Back then I cried because I felt alone. Now I cry because I understand the depth of what I've lived. I cry because I survived the winter outside, and the winter inside. I cry because I learned that strength can be quiet. That courage can look like waking up again. That belonging is not given, it is grown. And I cry because, in the end, I didn't just adapt to this place. I became someone who can live here. Not by forgetting who I was, but by becoming someone who can carry every version of myself without leaving any behind. Sometimes, late at night, I look out the window. The street is quiet. The air is still. The world is calm in a way it rarely is during the day. And I remember that first winter, the cold, the silence, the loneliness that felt endless. But now, I see something different. The same snow that once made me feel small now shines under the streetlights like tiny stars. Soft, gentle, familiar. I wrap my arms around myself, not because I am cold but because I know now that I can hold myself. I used to think the tears I cried back then were signs of weakness. But now I understand. Those tears were seeds. Seeds of who I would become. Seeds of strength I couldn't see yet. Seeds of a self that could exist in more than one world. The person I was before is still with me. The person I became here is still unfolding. And I don't have to choose between them. I am both. I am all of my beginnings. All of my winters. All of my quiet nights. All of my miles traveled. All of my tears, then and now. I cried during my first winter as an immigrant because I didn't know if I would make it. Now I cry because I did. Not in the loud way. Not in the triumphant way. But in the quiet, slow, deeply human way. The kind of survival that doesn't need applause. The kind of growth that can only be seen from inside. If you're watching this and you're somewhere in your own winter, I hope you hear me. You are not weak. You are not behind. You are not alone. You are becoming. One quiet day at a time. And the tears you cry now will mean something different later.